For two officers, another routine stop meant another chance to frame an unsuspecting black driver. They saw a man in a sharp suit, steady hands, calm eyes, and assumed he was powerless, just another target they could intimidate with barked orders and planted cocaine. What they didn't see was the weight beneath his shirt, a federal badge earned from 20 years dismantling drug cartels. When the cuffs clicked and the evidence bag swung in a triumphant hand, their confidence grew. But he was no victim. Their scheme had already sown the seeds of their downfall. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The autumn sun hung low in the Atlanta suburbs, casting long shadows across the well-maintained streets. Elijah Hayes's fingers tapped lightly on his steering wheel, keeping time with the smooth jazz flowing from his car speakers. The melody of Take 5 helped ease the tension from a long day of DEA briefings downtown. His gray wool overcoat lay perfectly pressed on the passenger seat, a habit from his 20 years of service. The familiar weight of his badge rested against his chest under his crisp white shirt. Traffic was light on this tree-lined stretch, and Elijah allowed his mind to drift toward dinner plans. The flash of red and blue lights in his rear-view mirror jolted him from his thoughts. Elijah checked his speedometer. 62 in a 60 zone. His jaw tightened as he eased his black sedan toward the curb, tires crunching on fallen leaves. Two officers approached his car, one on each side. The taller one, Officer Harlan, rapped his knuckles against Elijah's window with unnecessary force. Elijah pressed the button, lowering it smoothly. "License and registration," Harlan barked, not bothering with a greeting. His partner, Officer Vaughn, hung back slightly, hand resting near his holster. "Good afternoon, officers," Elijah replied evenly, reaching slowly for his wallet. "May I ask why I've been stopped?" Harlan's face hardened. "You were swerving back there. Been drinking today?" Elijah kept his voice steady, though his pulse quickened. "No, sir, I haven't been drinking. I was driving straight as an arrow." "That's not what I saw." Harlan snatched Elijah's license and registration, studying them with exaggerated scrutiny. "Step out of the vehicle." "Officer, I don't believe that's necessary." "I said step out." Harlan's voice rose sharply. "Both hands where I can see them." Elijah recognized the dangerous edge in Harlan's tone. He'd heard it before, not as a law enforcement officer, but as a black man who'd faced similar situations throughout his life. His training kicked in. "Stay calm, comply, survive the moment. I'm going to exit the vehicle slowly," Elijah announced, keeping his movements deliberate. The jazz continued to play softly in the background. Now, an incongruous soundtrack to the mounting tension. Officer Vaughn shifted nervously, his young face betraying anxiety as Elijah unfolded his tall frame from the car. The autumn wind caught Elijah's tie, flapping it against his shirt. "Hands on the hood," Harlan commanded, his tone dripping with unearned authority. "Spread your legs," Elijah complied, feeling the cool metal beneath his palms. He noticed a woman walking her dog across the street, slowed down to watch the scene unfold. She pulled out her phone and Elijah felt a flicker of gratitude. Witnesses mattered. "My partner's going to search your vehicle," Harlan announced, beginning to pat Elijah down with unnecessary roughness. "You got anything in there we should know about?" "No, sir," Elijah replied, maintaining his composure even as Harlan's hands became more aggressive in their search. "I do not consent to a search of my vehicle." Harlan laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "Consent? That's cute. We've got probable cause. You were swerving, remember?" Through the car's open window, Elijah could hear Vaughn rummaging through his vehicle, the sound of his glove compartment being yanked open, the rustle of papers, the thud of his briefcase being moved. "Officer," Elijah tried again. "I'm a federal." "Shut it." Harlan's hand pressed harder between Elijah's shoulder blades. "You don't give the orders here." Elijah felt the familiar weight of handcuffs being removed from Harlan's belt. His mind raced through options, calculating risks. If he revealed his identity too soon, they might try to cover their tracks. If he waited too long, the situation could escalate beyond his control. The autumn wind picked up, sending leaves skittering across the pavement. More cars were slowing as they passed, drivers craning their necks to watch. Elijah counted 3 phones recording now. The jazz from his car had ended, replaced by a news update that nobody was listening to. "Hey, Derek," Vaughn called out, his voice trembling slightly. "You better come look at this." Harlan kept one hand pressed against Elijah's back as he turned toward his partner. What have you got? Elijah remained still, his palms flat against the hood, knowing this moment would define everything that followed. He could feel the metal of his DEA badge pressing against his chest, a reminder of who he was and what he stood for. The tension in the air thickened as Vaughn emerged from the passenger side of Elijah's car. His face had gone pale and his hands shook slightly as they gripped something Elijah couldn't see. Harlan's fingers dug harder into Elijah's shoulder. Well, Harlan's voice took on a predatory edge. What do we have here? The wind gusted again, stronger now, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and approaching rain. Elijah remained silent, his mind cataloging every detail, the pressure of Harlan's hand, the growing crowd of onlookers, the exact words being spoken. He knew that whatever came next would need to be documented with perfect clarity. Traffic had nearly stopped now, creating an audience for what was unfolding. The woman with the dog had moved closer, her phone still recording. 2 more cars pulled to the shoulder, their occupants watching intently. The scene was set, the players in position, and Elijah Hayes stood perfectly still, waiting for the next move in this dangerous game. The plastic evidence bag dangled from Harlan's fingers, sunlight catching the white powder inside. He emerged from Elijah's car with a triumphant smirk, holding the cocaine like he'd just discovered buried treasure. Well, what do you know? Harlan's voice carried across the street, pitched deliberately loud for the gathering audience. Looks like we've got ourselves a drug dealer. Elijah's stomach clenched as he watched Harlan's performance. The bag hadn't been there minutes ago. He knew his car was clean. He'd checked it thoroughly that morning, as he did every day. 20 years of DEA work had taught him the importance of vigilance. That's not mine, Elijah stated firmly, his voice carrying the weight of truth. And you know it. Harlan circled back to where Elijah stood, still pressed against the hood. The officer made a show of examining the bag, turning it this way and that in the fading sunlight. Nice try, but guys like you always say that. The words guys like you hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Elijah felt the familiar burn of injustice in his chest, but kept his breathing steady. He'd faced this kind of prejudice before, seen it destroy too many lives. But this time was different. This time they'd picked the wrong target. Officer Vaughn, Harlan called out. Cuff him. Vaughn approached with handcuffs ready, his movements jerky and uncertain. His hands trembled slightly as he grabbed Elijah's right wrist, pulling it behind his back. The cold metal of the cuffs bit into Elijah's skin as Vaughn ratcheted them too tight. Easy with those cuffs, son, Elijah said quietly to Vaughn. They don't need to cut off circulation to do their job. Vaughn hesitated, glancing at Harlan, who barked, ignore him. Get those cuffs on tight. More cars had stopped now. Elijah counted at least 6 people filming with their phones. A man in a business suit stood on the sidewalk, speaking urgently into his phone. 2 teenagers on bikes watched wide-eyed from across the street. You have the right to remain silent, Harlan began, clearly enjoying himself. He roughly grabbed Elijah's shoulder, spinning him around to face the growing crowd. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Elijah watched the scene as if from outside himself, noting every detail with professional precision. The way Harlan's badge caught the light, the nervous sweat beading on Vaughn's forehead, the exact position of the sun in the sky. Everything would matter later. You know, Elijah said calmly. There are cameras everywhere these days. People watching recording makes it harder to control the narrative. Harlan's grip tightened painfully on Elijah's arm. Is that a threat? Just an observation. Keep running your mouth, Harlan snarled. See how that works out for you in booking. Vaughn had moved to open the back door of their patrol car. His movements still uncertain. The young officer's face showed conflict. He knew something wasn't right, but lacked the courage to speak up. Elijah felt the weight of his DEA badge against his chest, hidden beneath his shirt. The moment to reveal it was approaching, but timing was crucial. He needed witnesses. Needed the officer's true colors on full display first. Start walking, Harlan commanded, shoving Elijah forward. The handcuffs dug deeper as Harlan pushed, making a show of controlling his dangerous suspect. Elijah stumbled slightly, catching himself. Careful there, Officer Harlan. Wouldn't want to add excessive force to the growing list of problems here. List of problems? Harlan laughed harshly. The only problem here is you thinking you can talk your way out of this. We caught you red-handed. They reached the patrol car. Vaughn stood by the open door, shifting his weight from foot to foot. His discomfort was palpable as he watched Harlan's rough handling of their suspect. Elijah turned slightly, meeting Harlan's eyes. Last chance, officer. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this? Do what? Harlan sneered. Arrest a drug dealer. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Tommy, Elijah said softly, addressing Vaughn by his first name. You might want to pay close attention to what happens next. Could be educational. Harlan's face darkened. That's it. In the car now. Before we do that, Elijah said, his voice carrying clearly to the watching crowd. There's something you should see. Despite the awkward angle of his cuffed hands, he managed to pull his shirt aside just enough to reveal the badge hanging against his chest. Special Agent Elijah Hayes, Drug Enforcement Administration. And you two just made the biggest mistake of your careers. The effect was immediate. Harlan's grip went slack, his face draining of color. Vaughn stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Harlan stuttered, his arrogance evaporating like morning dew. His hands fell away from Elijah's shoulders as if burned. The crowd had grown silent, phones still recording, witnesses to the sudden shift in power. The autumn wind rustled through the trees, sending more leaves spiraling down around them. In the distance, thunder rumbled, promising rain. Elijah stood tall despite the handcuffs, his dignity intact. He watched as the realization of what they'd done crashed over both officers. Vaughn looked ready to faint while Harlan's face had taken on a sickly gray color. Now, Elijah said, his voice steady and clear. Would someone like to remove these handcuffs? We have a lot to discuss. The smirk on Harlan's face vanished completely, replaced by a sickly pallor. His hands fumbled with the handcuff keys, nearly dropping them twice before managing to unlock the restraints. Elijah rubbed his wrist slowly, noting the red marks where the cuffs had been too tight. Sir, we didn't. Harlan stammered, his earlier cockiness evaporated like morning dew. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool autumn air. Vaughn looked ready to throw up, his young face ashen. Agent Hayes, sir, this was just a misunderstanding. We didn't mean a misunderstanding. Elijah's voice remained calm, but carried an edge of steel. Let's review what just happened. You conducted an illegal search of my vehicle. You planted evidence. You violated my civil rights and you made it clear this was racially motivated. He gestured to the watching crowd, many still recording. All on camera. Harlan's eyes darted between the witnesses and Elijah, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. Listen, we can work this out. No need to. DEA protocol is very clear. Elijah cut him off. Any law enforcement officer who encounters attempted corruption or civil rights violations must report it immediately. Section 31.4 of the Field Manual. He pulled out his phone. I should probably call this in now. The two officers exchanged panicked looks. Vaughn's hand trembled as he reached for his radio, fumbling it slightly before pressing the button. Dispatch, this is Officer Vaughn. We need Lieutenant Kane at our location. Code 3. Copy that. The dispatcher's voice crackled back. What's the situation? Vaughn's voice quavered. Tell him it's a misunderstanding that needs his immediate attention. Elijah raised an eyebrow at the word misunderstanding, but said nothing. He simply stood there radiating quiet authority as both officers shifted uncomfortably. The crowd had grown larger with more phones recording the scene. Someone in the back shouted, "Get those racist cops. Please step back, folks." Harlan called out weakly, his earlier bravado completely gone. This is a police matter. Oh, it's definitely a police matter, Elijah agreed. One that's going to require a lot of paperwork, internal affairs, federal investigation, the works. He checked his watch. I should probably call my supervisor, too. In the U.S. Attorney's office. Vaughn looked ready to faint. Sir, please. My career. I've only been on the force 2 years. Should have thought about that before participating in criminal conspiracy. Elijah replied evenly. Planting evidence is a federal offense. Not to mention the civil rights violations. The sound of an approaching vehicle drew their attention. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up smoothly, its engine purring. The door opened, and Lieutenant Victor Kane stepped out with the practiced ease of someone used to taking command of difficult situations. Kane was stocky, but carried himself with authority. His salt and pepper hair neatly trimmed, his uniform pressed to perfection. His eyes were sharp and calculating as they took in the scene, the crowd with their phones, his two officers looking like scared schoolboys, and Elijah standing tall in his gray wool coat. Afternoon, gentlemen, Kane said, his voice carrying a smooth southern charm. Seems we have ourselves a situation here. He approached Elijah with his hand extended. "Lieutenant Victor Kane, I understand. There's been some confusion with my officers." Elijah shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip and the way Kane's eyes never wavered. "Special Agent Elijah Hayes, DEA. Your officers planted cocaine in my vehicle during an illegal search. Multiple witnesses, multiple recordings. That's a serious accusation," Kane replied, still smiling. But there was something cold in his eyes now, something that didn't match his friendly tone. "It's not an accusation, it's a fact." Elijah gestured to the evidence bag, still clutched in Harlan's hand. "The whole thing's on video, multiple angles." Kane nodded thoughtfully, then turned to address the crowd. "Folks, we appreciate your concern, but this is a sensitive law enforcement matter. Please clear the area." A few people drifted away, but most stayed put, phones still recording. Kane's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Agent Hayes," he said, turning back to Elijah. "Why don't we discuss this somewhere more private? My office isn't far." "I think here is fine," Elijah replied, "in front of witnesses." Kane stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen, son, I understand you're upset, but you're new to our jurisdiction, and you don't understand how things work here." His tone was still friendly, but there was steel beneath the velvet. "Best to forget this ever happened. For your own good." The threat was clear, despite the polite delivery. Elijah held Kane's gaze, reading the years of entrenched power and corruption in those cold eyes. This wasn't just about two cops planting evidence anymore. This went deeper. "Is that a threat, Lieutenant?" "Just some friendly advice," Kane replied, still smiling. "From one law enforcement professional to another. Sometimes these misunderstandings can spiral out of control. Careers get damaged. Reputations get ruined. Nobody wants that." The autumn wind picked up, sending leaves skittering across the pavement. In the distance, thunder rumbled again, closer now. The gathering storm seemed fitting for the tension crackling in the air between them. Elijah kept his expression neutral, but his mind was racing. 20 years of DEA work had taught him to read between the lines, and Kane's friendly advice was setting off every alarm bell he had. "A mistake." Elijah's voice carried just enough edge to make Kane's smile falter. "Your officers conducted an illegal search, planted evidence, and violated my civil rights." "That's not a mistake, Lieutenant. That's a pattern of criminal behavior." Kane's charm didn't waver, but something hardened in his eyes. "Agent Hayes, you seem like a reasonable man, smart, career-focused." He gestured to the dispersing crowd. "These people, they don't understand the complexities of law enforcement. The split-second decisions we have to make. Sometimes things get messy. Messy." Elijah's quiet tone drew Harlan and Vaughn's attention. They stood awkwardly to the side, looking like children watching their parents argue. "There's nothing messy about planting evidence. That's premeditated, calculated, criminal." Thunder rumbled closer, and a few drops of rain began to fall. Kane's friendly mask slipped just a fraction. "You know how it is in our line of work," Kane said. His voice lower now. "Paperwork gets filed wrong. Evidence gets misplaced. Witnesses change their stories. Even video footage can be unreliable." He spread his hands in a gesture of mock helplessness. "The system's complicated. Things get lost in the shuffle." Elijah felt a cold anger settling in his chest. This wasn't just about two cops getting caught doing something wrong. This was systematic, practiced, refined. "How many?" Elijah asked quietly. "Excuse me, how many other people have your officers framed? How many are sitting in prison right now because of planted evidence?" A muscle twitched in Kane's jaw. The friendly mask slipped further. "That's dangerous speculation, Agent Hayes. The kind that could make life very complicated for a federal agent, especially one working in our jurisdiction." "Is that right?" Elijah pulled out his phone, making sure Kane could see him typing. "I should probably add attempted intimidation of a federal officer to my report." Kane's smile vanished completely. "Listen here," he growled, stepping closer. "You're not the first hot shot who thought he could clean up our town. But trust me, son, you don't want this fight. Bad things happen to people who don't know their place." The racial undertone wasn't subtle. Elijah had heard it his whole life. That phrase about knowing your place. It made his blood boil, but he kept his voice steady. "My place," Elijah replied, letting just a hint of steel enter his tone. "My place is upholding the law. All of it, not just the parts that are convenient for corrupt officers." Raindrops fell harder now, dotting the pavement. Kane's face darkened like the gathering storm clouds. Last chance, Kane said softly. Walk away. File it as a routine stop with no issues. Everyone goes home happy. His eyes narrowed. Or push this and find out just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Your choice. Elijah looked at Officers Harlan and Vaughn, still hovering uncertainly nearby. They avoided his gaze, suddenly very interested in their shoes. How many times had they done this? How many lives had they ruined with planted evidence and false arrests? You're right about one thing, Elijah said, his voice carrying clearly despite the falling rain. This is my choice, and I choose to do my job. He held Kane's gaze. The DEA takes corruption very seriously, Lieutenant, especially when it involves drug evidence being planted. The DEA, Kane's laugh was cold. Boy, you really don't understand how things work around here, do you? One phone call from me and your supervisors will be drowning in complaints about you, anonymous tips about your misconduct, reports of excessive force, allegations of corruption. He spread his hands. Who do you think they'll believe? A respected police lieutenant with 25 years of service or the angry black agent making wild accusations? The threat hung in the air between them. Elijah felt the weight of it. The years of systemic racism and corruption pressed into those words, but he didn't flinch. You're used to people backing down, Elijah observed. Used to them being afraid. But here's something you should understand about me, Lieutenant. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I've spent my entire career fighting people like you, and I'm very, very good at my job. Rain was falling steadily now, soaking through Elijah's wool coat. Neither man moved. Get in your car and drive away, Kane said finally. All pretense of friendliness gone. Forget this happened. Or don't. Your choice. His smile returned cold as ice. But remember, you were warned. Elijah walked back to his car without another word, feeling their eyes on him. As he slid behind the wheel, he caught a glimpse of Harlan and Vaughn in his rear-view mirror, already huddling with Kane, no doubt planning their next move. The engine purred to life, and Elijah pulled away from the curb. His hands were steady on the wheel, but his jaw was clenched tight enough to hurt. They thought he would back down. Let them bury this like they'd buried so many other incidents. They thought wrong. Elijah's house was quiet, except for the soft clink of ice against glass. He sat in his home office, the evening shadows growing longer as he poured 2 fingers of bourbon. The amber liquid caught the light from his desk lamp, and he watched it swirl as he replayed the afternoon's events in his mind. The traffic stop hadn't been random. The way Harlan and Vaughn operated, it was too practiced, too smooth, and Kane's arrival, his carefully worded threats. They'd done this before, many times. Elijah took a slow sip, letting the bourbon warm his throat. His gray wool overcoat hung on the door, still damp from the rain. The sight of it reminded him of Kane's smug face, that condescending tone when he'd said, "Boy, 20 years in law enforcement, and some things never changed." His phone buzzed on the desk, disrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed Alex Rivera, a fellow DEA agent he'd worked with for years. Elijah's stomach tightened as he answered. "Hayes," he said, keeping his voice neutral. "Elijah, we need to talk." Rivera's voice was low, urgent. "Something's happening. Internal Affairs just received 3 separate complaints about you. They're saying you've been heavy-handed during arrests, maybe even planting evidence yourself." Elijah's hand tightened around his glass already. "It's been less than 4 hours. You know how it works. Anonymous tips concern citizens, all very official-looking." Rivera paused. "What did you step in, Elijah?" "Corrupt cops in Clayton County. Caught them planting drugs during a traffic stop." Elijah took another sip. "Their lieutenant tried to convince me to forget about it. Let me guess. Lieutenant Victor Kane." Elijah sat up straighter. "You know him by reputation. He's got friends in high places. Politicians, judges, maybe even some federal connections." Rivera's voice dropped lower. "Word is his department has an unusually high drug arrest rate. Lots of plea deals. Not many cases going to trial because the evidence is planted," Elijah said, pieces clicking into place. "They're targeting people who can't fight back. Elijah, listen to me. These complaints they're filing, they're laying groundwork. Next will come the media leaks, suggestions of misconduct. They'll try to destroy your credibility before you can expose them." Elijah stood walking to his window. The street outside was dark now, peaceful. How many people had driven through this county? He wondered, only to have their lives destroyed by Kane's corrupt operation. "They're efficient," Elijah said. "I'll give them that, but they made a mistake targeting me. What are you going to do? Elijah returned to his desk, opening his laptop. Fight back, but smart. These guys are used to bullying people who can't defend themselves. Time to show them what it's like when someone punches back. Be careful, Rivera warned. Kane's got a reputation for making problems disappear. I appreciate the heads up, Alex. I owe you one. After hanging up, Elijah pulled up a secure browser and began accessing police databases. His security clearance as a DEA agent gave him access to records most people couldn't see. He started with Harlan and Vaughn. Let's see how dirty you really are, he muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard. The data started painting a picture. Over the past 3 years, Harlan and Vaughn had made an unusually high number of drug arrests, mostly young black men, mostly during traffic stops. The amounts of drugs were always similar, just enough to qualify for serious charges, but not enough to trigger federal involvement. Elijah opened a new document, starting to log patterns. The locations clustered around certain neighborhoods. The charges were always nearly identical. The evidence was always found in similar places, under seats, in glove compartments, spots easy to plant something during a search. He pulled up court records next. Most cases ended in plea deals. Public defenders overwhelmed with cases advised their clients to plead guilty rather than risk longer sentences at trial. The few who did fight the charges mysteriously had evidence go missing or witnesses change their stories. Elijah's bourbon sat forgotten as he dug deeper. He started a timeline mapping out when Harlan and Vaughn had started working together, when their arrest numbers suddenly spiked. He noted the judges who handled their cases, the prosecutors who pushed the plea deals. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Rivera. 2 more complaints just came in. They're saying you've been aggressive with informants, maybe even taking kickbacks. Elijah's jaw clenched. They were moving fast, trying to bury him in allegations before he could build his case. But they didn't realize what they were dealing with. He'd spent his career building cases against drug cartels, people who had resources and connections these local cops couldn't imagine. He opened another database, this one tracking asset forfeitures. Kane's department showed an unusual pattern there, too. Lots of seized vehicles, cash, and property from drug arrests. Money that went straight into department coffers. The pieces were forming a pattern, one that made his blood boil. This wasn't just about racist cops harassing black drivers. This was a systematic operation. Target vulnerable people, plant evidence, push plea deals, seize assets, rinse and repeat. Elijah pulled out a fresh legal pad, starting to map out connections. He'd need more than just statistics to bring them down. He'd need witnesses, documentation, maybe even someone on the inside willing to talk. His eyes fell on Officer Vaughn's personnel file. The rookie had looked nervous during the stop, almost sick when Harlan found the planted drugs. Maybe there was something there to work with. The courthouse stood like a stern guardian in the early morning light, its stone columns casting long shadows across the steps. Elijah adjusted his tie and straightened his shoulders before entering. He'd traded his signature wool overcoat for a sharp navy suit. Today he needed to look every inch the federal agent he was. The archives section occupied the basement level, a maze of fluorescent-lit corridors lined with filing cabinets and document boxes. The air smelled of old paper and dust. At this early hour, the space was nearly empty, perfect for the kind of digging Elijah needed to do. He approached the front desk where Mrs. Alvarez sat organizing papers. She was a petite woman in her late 40s with reading glasses perched on her nose and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her eyes widened slightly when he showed his credentials. I need to review arrest records and case files, Elijah said quietly, specifically those involving officers Harlan and Vaughn. Mrs. Alvarez's hands paused over her paperwork. That's quite a lot of files. They're very active officers. I'm sure they are. I'd like to start with the last 6 months. She nodded and led him to a small research room. I'll bring what we have. Box after box arrived filled with manila folders and police reports. Elijah settled into a systematic review, creating a spreadsheet on his laptop. Names, dates, locations, charges, patterns began emerging within the first hour. Terrence Monroe, 19, pulled over for a broken tail light. Cocaine found under the passenger seat. Nathan Carter, 22, stopped for rolling through a stop sign. Heroin in the glove compartment. Brandon Ellis, 20, routine license check. Meth in the trunk. Young black men, minor traffic violations, drugs conveniently discovered during searches. The similarities were striking. Elijah noted how the evidence was always found in easily accessible places, perfect for planting. The amounts were consistent, too, just enough to ensure serious charges without triggering federal jurisdiction. Mrs. Alvarez brought another box, lingering this time. She glanced at his notes, then at the door before speaking softly. "There's something else you should know." Elijah looked up, keeping his expression neutral. "I'm listening." She sat down, hands fidgeting with her reading glasses. "I've worked here 15 years. I know what normal police paperwork looks like. There are reports. There are irregularities. What kind of irregularities? The timing, for one thing. Sometimes the evidence processing forms are dated before the actual arrests, and the language they use, it's too similar across different cases, like they're copying and pasting." Elijah leaned forward. "Have you mentioned this to anyone?" Mrs. Alvarez's face tightened. "Once to my supervisor. The next day, Lieutenant Kane visited my office. He was very concerned about my job security. Asked about my daughter's college tuition." The threat was clear. Elijah felt a familiar anger rising but kept his voice gentle. "How long has this been going on?" "It started about 3 years ago when Harlan transferred here. The number of drug arrests shot up. Vaughn joined him last year. He was fresh from the academy." She paused. "The worst part is the families. They come here trying to get copies of the reports, trying to understand what happened to their sons, their brothers. Most can't afford good lawyers. They take plea deals because they're scared." Elijah pulled out a business card and wrote his personal cell number on the back. "If you think of anything else or if anyone pressures you about this conversation, call me anytime." She took the card with trembling fingers. "Be careful. Lieutenant Kane has friends everywhere. Judges, prosecutors, even some federal agents. I'm starting to understand that." Elijah turned back to the files. "Could you pull the records from 3 years ago when Harlan first arrived?" More boxes appeared. Elijah dove deeper, mapping out how the operation had evolved. Early cases were sloppier with more defendants fighting the charges. But over time, the system had been refined. The reports got cleaner, the evidence more consistent, the plea deals more efficient. His phone buzzed. Another text from Rivera. 3 more complaints filed against you. They're moving fast." Elijah ignored it, focusing on a particular case that caught his eye. A young man named Marcus Wilson had refused to take a plea deal, insisting the drugs weren't his. Mysteriously, key evidence had gone missing before trial. The case was dismissed, but Wilson lost his job and spent 6 months in jail before being cleared. Mrs. Alvarez returned with coffee. "Found something interesting. Maybe the Wilson case. What happened to him?" Her face darkened. "He moved away after the trial. His mother still comes in sometimes asking questions. She never believed the official story." Elijah made a note of the name. Victims who fought back, families who wouldn't stay quiet. These could be valuable allies. The morning stretched into afternoon. Elijah's eyes burned from reading, but the picture was becoming clearer. This wasn't just about racist cops harassing black drivers. It was a carefully constructed system of oppression using drug charges to destroy lives and enrich the department through asset forfeitures. When he finally stood to leave, his back aching from hours of hunching over files, Mrs. Alvarez handed him a thick folder. "These are copies of the irregularities I noticed, the ones I was too afraid to report." Elijah took the folder, feeling its weight. "Thank you. I know this isn't easy." She glanced around nervously. "Just make it count." He nodded, tucking the folder under his arm. As he climbed the stairs out of the archives, each step felt heavier than the last. The evidence was there, but so was the scope of what he was facing. Not just 2 corrupt officers, but an entire system designed to protect them. Outside, dark clouds were gathering, matching his mood. The folder under his arm contained enough patterns to confirm his suspicions, enough irregularities to justify a deeper investigation, but it also represented dozens of lives ruined, families torn apart, communities terrorized. Elijah pulled up to a modest 1-story house with well-tended flower beds and a small American flag by the door. The home of Sandra Thompson sat in a quiet neighborhood where children's bikes lay scattered on front lawns. He checked the address again, straightened his tie, and grabbed his notepad. Sandra opened the door before he could knock. She was a small woman in her 50s with tired eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Agent Hayes, thank you for coming." Her voice was soft but dignified. The living room was spotless with family photos covering every wall. College graduation pictures, sports trophies, and academic awards told the story of a family that valued education and hard work. Sandra gestured to a worn armchair while she settled on the couch. "Tell me about Malik," Elijah said gently. Sandra's hands twisted in her lap. "My boy was never in trouble. Never. He worked 2 jobs to save for college. The morning they arrested him, he was headed to a job interview at the bank." Tears welled in her eyes. "He wore his best suit, the one we bought for his high school graduation." Elijah nodded, letting her continue. "They said they found drugs in his car, but Malik never touched drugs. He saw what they did to his cousin Terrence, swore he'd never go down that path." She reached for a tissue. 10 years. They gave my baby 10 years. Told him if he didn't take the plea deal, they'd make it 20. Elijah studied a recent photo of Malik, a young man with bright eyes and an easy smile, wearing a suit and tie. "Did anything seem unusual about the arrest?" "Everything. The officers who stopped him, Harlan and Vaughn, they didn't even give a reason at first. Then they said his tail light was out, but we checked that car every week. Malik was careful about things like that." Sandra's voice hardened. "They tore his car apart, made him sit on the curb in his good suit. When they found the drugs, they were laughing. The pattern was familiar." Elijah made notes, his jaw tight. "Has Malik had any problems in prison?" "He writes me every week, stays positive, takes classes." But Sandra stood and retrieved a letter from a drawer. In his last letter, he mentioned guards pressuring him to stop filing appeals. Said they could make things difficult if he didn't stay quiet. Elijah read the letter, noting names and dates. "The same pressure tactics, the same threats. I visit him when I can afford the bus ticket," Sandra continued. "It breaks my heart seeing him in that place. He was going to be somebody. Agent Hayes. Now his life is just waiting." After leaving Sandra's house, Elijah drove to the home of the Ramirez family. Their son Diego was serving 8 years on similar charges. Mrs. Ramirez met him at the door with coffee and determination. "Diego was a mentor at the youth center," she said, showing Elijah pictures of her son working with kids. "The police claimed he was dealing to teenagers. It made me sick. He spent his free time keeping kids away from drugs." The living room was smaller than Sandra's, but just as neat. A half-finished college application lay on the coffee table. Diego was filling this out the night before. Mrs. Ramirez explained he wanted to study social work. The next house belonged to the Patterson family. Their daughter Lauren had been driving her younger brother home from basketball practice when Harlan and Vaughn pulled them over. Only Lauren was arrested. The drugs mysteriously appeared in her purse after the search. 17 years old, Mr. Patterson said, his voice rough with emotion. "Honor roll student. Now she's got a record that'll follow her forever." House after house, the stories piled up. The Mitchell family's eldest son stopped while driving to church. The Jenkins' daughter arrested on her way to work. Each family showed Elijah's school records, character references, proof of their children's innocence that never made it to court. At the Lee household, Mrs. Lee served tea while describing how her son Jordan's arrest had affected their entire family. "The shame in our community," she whispered. "Nobody believes us when we say the drugs weren't his. His father had a heart attack from the stress." The sun was setting when Elijah reached the last house on his list. The Green family lived in a small apartment above a convenience store. Mrs. Green worked night shifts as a nurse. Her husband had died years ago. Their son, Kevin, was 6 months into a 12-year sentence. "Kevin was raising his little sister while I worked," Mrs. Green explained as a young girl played quietly in the corner. "He never left her alone, never got into trouble. Then one night they stopped him coming home from the grocery store. The familiar pattern, a routine stop, an aggressive search, drugs appearing as if by magic. Kevin took the plea deal because he was worried about who would take care of his sister if he got a longer sentence." Standing on the Greens' porch afterward, Elijah watched neighborhood children playing in the street. Their laughter carried on the evening air, innocent and unaware. A basketball bounced on cracked concrete. Somewhere, a mother called her kids in for dinner. "They think they're untouchable," Elijah whispered to himself. "Let's see." In his car, he reviewed his notes. 12 families visited, 12 lives destroyed. Each case file bulged with proof of innocence that never mattered. Dreams derailed by planted evidence and forced confessions. The names and faces blurred together, a tapestry of systematic injustice woven by Harlan, Vaughn, and their protectors. But there was something else in those living rooms, something that transcended the pain and anger. Hope. These families hadn't given up. They kept their children's rooms ready, maintained photo albums, saved newspaper clippings about wrongful convictions. They were waiting for someone to listen, someone to care, someone to fight back. Elijah parked his car outside a sleek downtown Atlanta office building. The brass plate beside the entrance read, "Sarah Bennett and Associates, Civil Rights Litigation." He adjusted his tie, gathered his files, and headed inside. The receptionist eyed his DEA badge suspiciously before buzzing him through. The office buzzed with energy. Young paralegals rushed between cubicles, phones rang constantly, and the walls displayed framed newspaper headlines about civil rights victories. Maya Bennett's corner office matched her reputation. Awards and law degrees competed for wall space with photos of protest marches and courtroom victories. She stood as Elijah entered. A striking woman in her mid-30s wearing a tailored navy suit, her natural hair styled in neat twists. Agent Hayes. Her handshake was firm, professional. "Your message mentioned police corruption. You have 15 minutes to convince me this isn't a waste of time." She gestured to a chair while settling behind her desk. Elijah placed his files on her desk. 12 families, all with children serving time for drug possession, all arrested by the same 2 officers, all with planted evidence. Maya's expression remained neutral as she opened the first file. "Police plant evidence all the time, Agent Hayes. What makes these cases special?" "Because I'm their latest target," Elijah described the traffic stop, the planted cocaine, Lieutenant Kane's threats. "They didn't know I was DEA. Now they're trying to bury me before I can expose them. And why come to me?" Maya looked up from the files, studying him carefully. "Your reputation. The Green case last year. You took on 3 departments and won. The Patterson lawsuit that exposed racial profiling in traffic stops. You don't back down." A slight smile crossed her face. "Flattery noted, but these cases are expensive. Agent Hayes. Time-consuming. And Lieutenant Kane has friends in high places. Judges, prosecutors, politicians. I have evidence." Elijah pulled out his laptop showing her surveillance photos of Harlan and Vaughn meeting known drug dealers. Bank records showing unusual deposits. Witness statements from courthouse employees about missing evidence. Pattern analysis of their arrests. 92% young black men, most with no prior records. Maya leaned forward, her skepticism giving way to interest. "The DEA teaches you to be thorough. I'm good at my job." Elijah's voice was steady. "These officers are destroying lives, and their superiors are covering it up. Someone needs to stop them. You realize what you're asking?" Maya stood, pacing behind her desk. "Taking on corrupt cops is dangerous enough, but if Kane has the connections you say he does, this could get ugly. Your career, your reputation, everything could be at risk. Already is." Elijah met her gaze. "They're building a case against me right now. False complaints, doctored reports. Soon they'll find more evidence, maybe enough to arrest me. I need to move first." Maya picked up a photo of Malik Thompson in his graduation suit. "These families, you've spoken to them. Spent yesterday visiting each one. Good kids, bright futures, all derailed by planted drugs. Their parents still believe in justice. Still hope someone will listen. Justice is expensive." Maya's tone was matter of fact, and slow. "And the system is designed to protect itself. That's why I need you." Elijah leaned forward. "You know how to fight the system. How to make it work for the people it's supposed to protect." Maya returned to her desk, spreading out the files. And I mean if I take this case, I need everything. Every shred of evidence, every witness statement, every inconsistency in their reports, nothing held back." "You'll have it all." Elijah nodded. "Plus whatever else I can dig up. And you understand the risks." Her eyes narrowed. "Kane won't play fair. He'll come after you, your career, maybe even your family. These cases get ugly fast." Elijah smiled slightly. "I don't scare easy. You should." Maya's voice was serious. "Fear keeps you sharp, makes you triple-check your evidence. Verify your sources. Protect your witnesses. Fearless people make mistakes. Then let's say I'm cautiously determined." Elijah met her gaze. "These families deserve justice. Those officers deserve consequences. And Kane needs to learn he's not above the law." Maya studied him for a long moment, then pulled out a legal pad. "Tell me everything again from the beginning. Every detail of your traffic stop. Everything Kane said. I want it all." For the next hour, Elijah walked her through his experience and findings. Maya took detailed notes, asking sharp questions, probing for weaknesses in the case. Her initial skepticism transformed into focused intensity. One last question. She set down her pen. Why risk everything? You've got a good career, respect, stability. Why put it all on the line for this? Elijah was quiet for a moment. Because 20 years ago, I was Malik Thompson. Clean record, bright future, wrong place, wrong time. The only difference was my uncle, a lawyer who fought like hell to prove my innocence. Without him, I'd be another statistic. These families don't have that advantage. Maya nodded slowly, then stood and extended her hand. All right, Agent Hayes, let's go to war. Their handshake was firm, a sealed pact between two fighters who understood the battle ahead. As they began discussing strategy, neither doubted that their alliance would shake Atlanta's power structure to its core. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as midnight approached in Maya's office. Empty coffee cups littered her desk and case files spread across every surface like fallen autumn leaves. Elijah sat in a leather chair, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, studying arrest records while Maya paced, yellow legal pad in hand. Here's another one, Elijah said, holding up a file. Victor Ramirez, 19, honor student at Georgia State. Arrested by Harlan and Vaughn last March. Same story. Routine traffic stop. Mysterious discovery of drugs. Maya stopped pacing and leaned over his shoulder. Let me guess. The search was conducted without consent, and the drugs were found in a spot that had already been checked, under the passenger seat. Elijah nodded, rubbing his tired eyes. Just like my stop. Just like Malik Thompson's case. They're not even trying to be creative. They don't need to be. Maya grabbed a marker and added Ramirez's name to her whiteboard timeline. Red strings connected similar cases, creating a web of corruption. The system's designed to take their word over the victims. Who's going to believe a black college kid over two decorated officers? Elijah stood, stretching his back. Look at the timing of these arrests. They're too regular, almost like they're hitting quotas. Monthly quotas. Maya studied the dates. No, these cluster around performance reviews and budget meetings. Kane's using these arrests to boost his precinct statistics, targeting people least likely to fight back, effectively. Elijah's jaw tightened. Young, black, limited resources for legal defense. Perfect victims. Maya grabbed her phone. Time to call in some favors. Your DEA connections might shed light on Kane's operation. Elijah pulled out his secure phone, stepping away to make calls. The office fell quiet except for hushed conversations and keyboard clicks as Maya dug deeper into precinct records. 20 minutes later, Elijah returned, his face grim. Got some interesting intel from my narcotics task force contacts. Seems Kane's precinct has a curious blind spot when it comes to certain neighborhoods. What kind of blind spot? Maya looked up from her computer. The kind where real drug operations flourish undisturbed. Elijah pulled up a map on his laptop. See these areas? Heavy drug traffic, but minimal arrests. Meanwhile, they're pulling over college kids and workers in middle-class neighborhoods. They're protecting the actual dealers. Maya's eyes narrowed. Better. Elijah opened another file on his phone. My contact sent over some surveillance photos. Look familiar. Maya leaned in, studying the image. It showed Lieutenant Kane in plain clothes meeting with a known drug dealer outside a warehouse. When was this taken? 3 months ago. DEA's been building a case, but they can't figure out why their operations keep getting compromised. Elijah swiped through more photos. Kane's playing both sides. He protects the real dealers while arresting innocent people to make it look like he's tough on crime. The perfect cover. Maya started pacing again, energy renewed. He keeps the drug trade flowing. Probably gets a cut of the profits while padding his arrest statistics with fake busts. The brass sees high numbers. The dealers keep their territory and innocent people go to prison. Elijah nodded. And anyone who questions it gets shut down like he tried to do with me. This is bigger than just clearing your name. Now Maya grabbed another file. We're looking at systematic corruption, civil rights violations, conspiracy, and RICO charges if we can prove the connection to drug trafficking. Elijah pulled up more files on his laptop. My contact mentioned unusual deposits in offshore accounts. If we can trace those, we'll need more than circumstantial evidence. Maya scribbled rapidly on her legal pad. Judges in these cases, any patterns? Elijah checked his notes. 3 judges handled most of these cases. All appointed during Kane's time as lieutenant. all with unusually high conviction rates for drug possession. Political connections. Maya added names to her whiteboard. Kane mentioned having friends in high places. We need to map out every relationship, every connection. They worked in focused silence, cross-referencing cases, building connections. The whiteboard filled with names, dates, and links. A pattern emerged, a complex web of corruption with Kane at its center. Look at this. Elijah pointed to a cluster of cases. Every time a real drug bust gets close to Kane's protected territory, there's suddenly a high-profile arrest somewhere else. Perfect distraction. He's playing the media, too. Maya pulled up newspaper archives. These arrests always make headlines. Tough cop cleans up streets. Meanwhile, the real dealers operate freely. The scope of Kane's operation became clearer with each connection they made. The corruption reached into the courts, the prosecutor's office, even local politics. Every piece they uncovered revealed a system more rotten than they'd initially suspected. This isn't just about dirty cops anymore. Maya's voice was tight with anger. This is about a whole corrupt machine that profits from destroying black lives. Elijah studied the whiteboard, his expression hard. Kane's just the visible part. Behind him, there's judges, politicians, maybe even federal officials. Maya moved to her desk, picking up the thick file containing all their evidence so far. The weight of it, physical and metaphorical, seemed to energize her. She slapped it shut with decisive force, turning to face Elijah. If we nail him, she said, her voice filled with determination. We don't just free victims. We shake the whole system. Elijah adjusted his tie, standing before the bathroom mirror in his DEA office. Today was the day they were going public with their findings. His phone buzzed, a text from Maya confirming their press conference at 2 p.m. Everything was ready. He walked to his desk, gathering the files they'd prepared. Colleagues passed by, nodding as usual. The morning felt normal, ordinary until it wasn't. Hayes, his supervisor, Agent Collins, burst from his office. My office now. Elijah followed, noticing the TV mounted on the wall. Channel 5 News was running a breaking story. His stomach dropped as he saw his photo on the screen. Turn it up, Collins ordered. The reporter's voice filled the room. Breaking news. Federal agent accused of evidence tampering. Sources reveal DEA Special Agent Elijah Hayes allegedly falsified evidence in multiple drug cases, calling into question dozens of convictions. Elijah's throat went dry. The report continued, showing doctored documents, his signature on evidence logs that he'd never signed, dates that didn't match, case numbers that looked wrong. Care to explain? Collins' face was stone. Those documents are fake, Elijah said firmly. This is retaliation. I've been investigating. Save it. Collins held up his hand. Internal Affairs is already on their way. Badge and gun. Now Elijah's hands felt heavy as he surrendered his weapon and credentials. Faces peered through the office windows, whispering. People he'd worked with for years now looked at him with suspicion. Pending investigation. You're suspended without pay, Collins said. Go home, Hayes. Don't leave town. The walk through the office was the longest of his life. Colleagues turned away as he passed. Only his partner, Sarah Rivera, met his eyes, concern evident on her face, but even she stayed silent. Outside, reporters had already gathered. Camera flashes burst like lightning as he pushed through them to his car. Agent Hayes, how long have you been falsifying evidence? How many innocent people are in prison because of you? The irony was bitter enough to choke on. His phone rang. Maya, they're killing the press conference, she said, her voice tight. My firm's partners are spooked. They're telling me to back off. Kane moved first, Elijah said, starting his car. He's trying to destroy my credibility before we can expose him. This is bad, Elijah. These documents look real. They've got dates, case numbers, everything. He must have someone inside the DEA helping him. Elijah pulled onto the street, noticed a news van following. Someone with access to our systems. Go home. Lay low. Let me work my contacts. See what I can salvage. Home wasn't any better. His neighbors, usually friendly, hurried inside when he pulled up. Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd brought him Christmas cookies every year for a decade, actually closed her curtains when he looked her way, inside. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text messages from unknown numbers. Dirty cop getting what he deserves. How many lives did you ruin? Hope you rot in prison. Email after email from reporters requesting comments. Social media notifications piling up. People he'd never met condemning him, sharing the news story, calling for his prosecution. The sun set, but Elijah couldn't bring himself to turn on any lights. He sat in his dark kitchen, the badge he'd surrendered earlier, lying on the table like a dead thing. The moonlight caught its surface, making the metal gleam dully. His doorbell rang, heart racing. He approached cautiously. Through the peephole, he saw Victor Ramirez's father, the man whose son was serving time because of Harlan and Vaughn. Elijah opened the door. "Mr. Ramirez, I trusted you." Ramirez's voice cracked. "You said you'd help my boy. Now I find out you're just like them." He shook his head, tears in his eyes. Victor had a future. He was going to be an engineer. "The news story isn't true." Elijah tried to explain. "I'm being set up. Save it." Ramirez turned away. "I should have known better than to trust the system. Any part of it." The door closed heavily. Elijah returned to his dark kitchen, the weight of despair pressing down on his shoulders. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The message chilled his blood. "Drop it or next time it won't be a bag, it'll be a body." More messages followed. "We know where you live. Accidents happen every day. Think about your choices." Elijah stared at his badge on the table, remembering the day he'd earned it. He'd believed then that the system could be fixed from within, that good people could make a difference. Now that same system was being used to destroy him. His home phone rang. Few people had that number. He let it go to voicemail, listened as it played through the speaker. "Elijah." It was Sarah Rivera's voice, barely a whisper. "Don't trust anyone at the office right now. Someone's going through your old case files pulling things. Be careful." The message clicked off, leaving him in silence again. Outside, a car drove by slowly, its headlights sweeping across his kitchen walls. Elijah stayed still, watching until it passed. His cell phone buzzed one more time. Another unknown number. "Last warning. Back off or the next headline won't be about your career. It'll be about your funeral." Elijah picked up his badge, feeling its weight. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd believed in now being used against him. In the darkness of his kitchen, surrounded by threats and abandoned by friends, he faced the reality of just how far Kane's influence reached, and just how alone he truly was. 3 days passed. Like a blur. Elijah barely left his house, surviving on coffee and takeout delivered to his door. The news cycle hadn't let up. If anything, the accusations had grown worse. Every hour brought new revelations about his supposed corruption. His living room became a cave of isolation, blinds drawn, TV off, phone silenced, empty containers littered the coffee table. The man who had once commanded respect in federal briefings now sat in darkness, his confidence shattered. The doorbell rang. Elijah ignored it like he had every other time. Then came Maya's voice. "Elijah Hayes, open this door right now, or I swear I'll stand here yelling until your whole neighborhood comes out to watch." He could picture her, hands on hips, that fierce look in her eyes. Sighing, he shuffled to the door. "You look terrible," she said, pushing past him into the house. She wrinkled her nose at the mess. "And it smells like something died in here. What do you want, Maya?" His voice was rough from disuse. She yanked open the blinds, letting in painful afternoon light. "I want you to stop hiding. This isn't the Elijah Hayes I know. The one who scared those corrupt cops just by showing his badge. That Elijah Hayes is gone." He slumped onto his couch. "They won. They destroyed my reputation, my career, everything I spent my life building." Maya sat across from him, leaning forward. "You're really going to let them win? Let them keep destroying lives while you sit here feeling sorry for yourself? What else can I do?" He gestured at the TV, muted, but still showing his face. "Nobody believes me anymore. I'm toxic. Even the families we were trying to help think I'm just another dirty cop." "Mrs. Thompson doesn't think that." Elijah looked up. "What?" "Malik's mother. I visited her yesterday. She's still standing by you. Says her son writes about you in his letters. Talks about how you're the first person in the system who ever tried to help him." Something stirred in Elijah's chest, but he pushed it down. One person doesn't change anything. "No." Maya pulled out her phone, scrolled through messages. "The Ramirez family called me. They want to apologize for doubting you. The Patterson family, too. People are starting to see through Kane's lies. It doesn't matter. The evidence they planted is falling apart." Maya's eyes gleamed. "Those documents, they made mistakes. Dates don't match DEA records. Signatures don't hold up under expert analysis. We can fight this, Elijah. But not if you're in here hiding. Elijah stood pacing. You don't understand. They threatened to kill me, Maya. Not just me. Anyone who helps me. I can't put more people at risk. People are already at risk. Maya's voice rose. Every day Kane and his crew are out there. More innocent lives get destroyed. You're not protecting anyone by giving up. You're just making it easier for them to keep doing it. Before Elijah could respond, someone knocked. They both tensed. Elijah approached the door cautiously, checked through the peephole, just his mail carrier. He opened the door, took the small stack of letters. Most were hate mail. He'd gotten good at recognizing the handwriting, but one envelope was different. Prison stationery. His hands shook slightly as he opened it. Dear Agent Hayes, I hope this reaches you. My mom told me what's happening. I want you to know I believe in you. In here, we see corrupt cops all the time. But you're different. You actually tried to help. That means something. I know it's hard. Some days in here, I want to give up, too. But then I think about my mom, how she never stops fighting for me. And I think about you investigating when nobody else would. Don't let them win, sir. We need people like you out there. Thank you for trying. Elijah read the letter twice, then handed it to Maya. She read in silence. That kid, Elijah's voice was thick, is sitting in prison because of cops like Kane. Because the system is rigged against him, and he's writing to encourage me. Maya watched him carefully. What are you going to do about it? Elijah walked to his bedroom. The gray wool overcoat hung in his closet, the same one he'd worn the day Harlan and Vaughn pulled him over. He put it on, went to his bathroom mirror. His reflection showed the wear of the past few days. Stubble, dark circles under his eyes, a defeated slump to his shoulders. But as he straightened the coat, muscle memory took over. His posture improved, his jaw set firmly. They think they can bury me with fake documents. He smoothed the coat's lapels. I've got 20 years of DEA experience. I know how to follow money, how to track connections, how to find the weak links in an organization. Now that sounds more like the Elijah Hayes I know. Maya smiled. They want to play dirty. Elijah's voice was low, determined. Time to fight dirty. He turned from the mirror, mind already racing with possibilities. Every criminal enterprise had its weakness. Every corrupt system had its pressure points. Kane thought he was untouchable because he controlled the official channels. But Elijah hadn't spent his career taking down drug cartels by playing nice. He knew how to work in the shadows, how to build cases piece by piece until they were impossible to ignore, how to make people nervous enough to turn on each other. The fire he'd lost was back, burning cold and focused. Kane and his crew had made a critical mistake. They'd pushed him to a point where he had nothing left to lose. Looking at Malik's letter again, Elijah felt the last traces of demoralization burn away. They'd tried to destroy him to protect their operation. Instead, they'd only freed him to fight without restraint. 2 weeks after Malik's letter arrived, New Hope Baptist Church buzzed with nervous energy. The old wooden pews were packed. Camera crews from local news stations lined the back wall. Elijah stood at the side of the pulpit, watching families file in. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, all touched by Kane's corruption. Maya paced near the altar, reviewing her notes. She'd convinced these families to speak out, to share their stories publicly. Many had been hesitant, fearing retaliation. But seeing others step forward had created a snowball effect. You ready? Elijah asked her quietly. She nodded, straightening her blazer. These people are scared but determined. Just like we talked about, let them tell their stories first. Build the emotional connection, then hit them with the evidence. Mrs. Thompson was first to speak. Her hands trembled as she gripped the podium, but her voice rang clear through the church's sound system. My son Malik was 19 when they arrested him. Honor student, basketball scholarship waiting for him. Officers Harlan and Vaughn claimed they found drugs in his car during a traffic stop. She paused, dabbing her eyes. The same traffic stop story they used on dozens of our children. Elijah scanned the crowd. Local reporters scribbled in notepads. Smartphones recorded everything. In the back, he spotted 2 uniformed officers, probably Kane's eyes and ears. One by one, families approached the podium. Their stories followed the same pattern. Routine stops, planted evidence, pressure to plead guilty, lives destroyed. Each account built on the last, painting a picture of systematic abuse. Isabella Ramirez described how her husband lost his business after his arrest. The Patterson family showed photos of their son's college graduation, a ceremony he attended in handcuffs because Harlan and Vaughn claimed they found cocaine in his textbooks. As the stories continued, Elijah noticed a shift in the room. The initial skepticism in reporter eyes turned to genuine interest. Smartphones stayed up longer. More cameras flashed. Maya took the podium next. "These aren't isolated incidents," she declared. "This is a pattern of corruption that goes straight to the top. Lieutenant Victor Kane hasn't just protected bad officers. He's actively participated in destroying lives to protect his real business interests." She nodded to Elijah. This was the moment they'd planned for. He stepped forward holding a thick manila envelope. "3 days ago, I received these documents from concerned colleagues at the DEA." His voice carried authority. Years of federal agent training evident in every word. They show Lieutenant Kane's connection to the very drug trade he claims to fight. Elijah pulled out the first document, a surveillance photo showing Kane meeting with known drug dealers. This was taken 6 months ago. The same week, officers Harlan and Vaughn arrested Brandon L.